What's up YouTube? Pete here from the Sunday Drive, and today we're going to be showing you how to install the Android Auto and Apple CarPlay compatible ATOTO SA102 head unit in this 2013 Dodge Ram, so stay tuned. So today we'll be installing this ATOTO SA102 in a Dodge Ram. If you don't already know, we have an ATOTO A6 Pro installed in my 2004 Silverado, and so far I have nothing but good things to say about it. It's been working flawlessly, and if you want to learn more about that head unit, click above or in the description below. We'll have a link to that. Now, this unit is quite a bit different than the A6 Pro in that it's a little bit more locked down to be more of a car-specific stereo. The A6 Pro has a more open version of Android installed on it, so you can do things like install applications from the Android App Store. This, not so much. Pretty much what you get in the box is what you have installed on here, but it does come with all of the things that you will want. But one really good thing about this SA102 is the fact that Apple CarPlay and Android Auto work straight out of the box with this. So all you have to do is plug in your phone, whereas with the A6 Pro, you have to go and buy another dongle to get those to work. Now, as we unbox this in a second, you'll see that it comes with less components than the A6 Pro. For instance, it does not come with a GPS antenna or a Wi-Fi antenna. This really doesn't have a GPS app built into it. You need to use your phone to do that. This unit does also work with steering wheel controls, so if your truck or car has that ability, then you're going to want to make sure that you buy a harness that allows for that compatibility. Now for this video, we're just going to be doing a quick unboxing, and we're going to show you the components that you need to install it in this specific vehicle. But we will be doing a very in-depth video of everything that this unit is capable of and how we like it. So be sure to check that out. We'll have that in the link below once we finish it and a card above. All right, so let's see what comes in this box. First thing you'll be greeted with is an instruction manual, which we're not going to read, and a wire harness, as well as some universal brackets to mount the stereo, which we're not going to be using because we have this Metro kit, which we'll show you in a second. There's also a trim piece. And then finally, the unit itself. So my hand's in the way, but once I get out of this bag, I will show you what kind of inputs it has on the back. So it's a very simple unit, a lot more slim than the A6 Pro. As you can see, it's almost like a single DIN radio with a big screen on the front. And this is kind of interesting, but even though it's an ATOTO unit, it says year along the bottom. I'm not sure why, but if you do get this unit and it says year and not ATOTO on the bottom, don't be worried. It is an actual legitimate unit. Now looking at the back of the unit, it's very simple still. You can see you have a 3x3 grid of RCA jacks. The top row are all inputs. This is an AV input and AV audio inputs. The middle row, these are audio outputs. And this yellow one here is the camera input. And then the bottom row are all outputs as well. This is a video output. As you can see, there's also a Sirius XM input, optional, a steering wheel control input, and then over here we have the universal antenna input. As for the wires hanging off, we have a subwoofer output, the screen capped plug, and a rear mic input, as well as a USB cable, which is where you'll plug your phone into to work with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. As for this plug, this is the main harness that will connect to all the speakers in the vehicle, the dimming, etc. All right, so here's everything that comes in the box. Out of the bags, here is the harness that plugs into the back of the unit and connects to the vehicle. Everything is labeled accordingly, so that makes it really easy. Here's a microphone and a lot of wire, a remote because, you know, the head unit's just so far away, and some universal brackets. Also, it comes with this glossy bezel. Now, since this is a Dodge Ram, this is a specific converter for the proprietary plug on Chryslers and Dodges. It's a VW A3B, that's the model. So this will make it so that you can plug it into the back of the head unit. You're going to want to buy a Metra or other brand, but we went with the Metra trim kit. And so this will make it look nice and complete when it's installed, so it looks like a factory finish. And finally, this is a big one. If you have a reverse camera, steering wheel controls, or something more complicated like an upgraded stereo with an amplifier that's turned on by the CAN bus, you're going to want to buy this. This is the RP4CH21, so it will work with this vehicle. This is nice because even if you don't have an amplified unit, you can still use this on the simple stereos. So pony up for this one and it will work no matter what. It really sucks if you buy the cheapest harness adapter and then you find out that you're going to need something more complicated that can turn on a CAN bus related amplifier. And as always, we will have links to all these in the description below. They're usually to Amazon affiliate links, and when you do purchase through those, it does help us out a lot. We do appreciate it, and it allows us to keep making content like this, so we'd appreciate it. So the first thing we need to do is remove this plastic piece and remove the 2 T20 screws holding this down. Now this entire front unit will pop off as one piece. So go ahead and grab a trim removal tool and start working around the edges, and the whole face should fall off. Go ahead and pull this off. This should give you enough room to work on the radio, but if you really want to free some space up, you can go ahead and disconnect all these connections. Remove the 4 7mm screws along the corners. So before we remove this radio completely, there are some things that you want to button up because you won't be able to change them after the fact. For instance, if you go to the settings, you'll have control, and you might have already done this when you got the truck to set it up how you want it, but you can control some features such as whether the doors auto lock or unlock, or the lights flash when you lock the car, or does the horn go off when you lock it. We want to make sure that you have this all set up to your liking. Now before we go any further, usually you want to disconnect the battery just to be safe. Now disconnect the 4 connections on the back of the factory radio. These are simple push type connections. And this last one, the big harness connection, is a lever clip. So just push in on the side and it will release, and then pull the lever back. And there it goes. All right, so now it's time to solder. So a few things you're gonna need are obviously the harness that goes to the radio, the harness that comes with the PAC unit, some soldering flux, some solder, a soldering gun, and some shrink wrap. Now all of the wires on the ATOTO side of the harness are labeled, so that's nice. Some of these wires do not coordinate perfectly with the other side of the harness. For instance, this reverse wire that looks like it's a magenta. On the PAC unit, this is actually going to go to a green wire. So it's just something to take note of. All of the speaker wire colors, such as the purples and the greens, those are the same on both sides. Now always make sure to slip over the shrink wrap before you do any soldering, because obviously you can't get it on after the fact, and I have forgotten to do that way too many times. Now let the connection cool down for a second and then slide your heat shrink over it. Finally, finish it up with a heat gun and shrink that shrink up. Now go ahead and connect the rest of the wires. If you run into any issues finding out which wire to connect to which, just reference this chart that came with the PAC unit, and obviously the head unit radio wires are all labeled, so that should make it easy. Alright, so the RP4CH21 needs to be configured before you install it. On the side there's this little dial with an arrow, and depending on what kind of radio you're installing is going to determine where you make it point. So since number 7 is for other, that's where we'll be putting it. So just get a real small screwdriver and twist it. So this should work, and if not, we'll let you know which setting is correct for the ATOTO. So go ahead and plug into the vehicle side of the harness. Alright, so there's a metal bracket back here, and unfortunately it gets in the way of installing the new radio because it messes up all of the angles. So we're going to use an air saw to cut out the bottom portion of this bracket. Okay, so we have the Metra brackets installed on the radio, and we're going to show you how to do that. But the first thing you need to do is remove this outer double DIN shell from the ATOTO. And to do that, it's quite simple. You just need to pry back on these side clips right here. These are what hold it to the radio case, and then this slides right off. The reason we remove this shell is because none of the holes match up with the Metra bracket. But if you do take the shell off, then there are at least 3 holes that you can use on the ATOTO SA102. To figure out the depth of these brackets, how far back or forward they should be set, take the front panel that fills the hole on the dash and just line it up. The radio will only go in so far, and then you can align these side brackets accordingly, and these are the 2 holes that we used. So now we can start plugging everything into the head unit. We can start with the radio antenna. Okay. Next, grab the yellow camera input, and that's going to go to the middle row, yellow. After that, you can grab the main power harness. Plugs right here in above the fuse. And then finally, the steering wheel control input. So we're going to want to make sure that the steering wheel controls are going to work with the unit. We have, as I said earlier, made the arrow point to number 7, which is for the other head units that aren't listed in the user's manual. You plug the steering wheel controls into this little 2x2 square, and that goes to the 3.5 millimeter jack input. And in order to program this how you would like, all you need to do is press this programming button once, and then there's a list in the user's manual that tells you the order that it cycles through, and you have to go through that order exactly as it says. So for instance, when you push this button, the first thing it's going to let you program is the volume up and then volume down. If you choose not to program one of the functions, you can press this again and it will skip that and go to the next one. This unit does allow you to either assign a short press or a long press to each button, essentially giving each button on the steering wheel 2 functions. Now the microphone plugs into this rear mic input. Now it says rear mic, but we're using it as the main mic because unfortunately this setup is not working with the factory built-in microphone on the car. And we're not sure why, but we do know that when we tested this microphone, it worked perfectly fine. Now here you can see a mini USB connection. This used to plug into the old radio. It doesn't get used in the new setup. However, we are curious if we can use this in the future. The reason we say that is because there is a USB port in the center console on the armrest, and there's also a USB port down here by the cigarette lighter. So if we could find an adapter to go from mini USB to USB type A and possibly plug it into the radio, we're thinking that we could retain the USBs that are built into the vehicle itself. So what we did was we dropped the USB wire attached to the radio down behind the dash, and we ran it all the way along the bottom, and then we tucked it under this centerpiece. So as you can see, here's all the cable for the USB wire. So to run the microphone, we're going to first remove this weather stripping and then pop off this side panel, and then we're going to run the wire through the dash. And it just comes off. Next, take a trim removal tool and stick it between here and the dash. So now we have a straight shot to run the wire. Now take the microphone and slip this long end up here. Oh, sorry. Hitting my cameraman here. All right, there you go. It just sits nicely up there, and you can adjust the direction of the microphone and then run this wire around the front. And be careful, depending on your vehicle. So in this case, it has airbags, but you want to be aware of how you run the wire because you do not want it to impede any side airbags. That would be detrimental to your health. And drop it in the hole next to this green plug. It's a good idea to run a zip tie just to hold the wire from rattling. Now we can pop this trim panel back on. It's very easy to find a spot to fish it back up. So now you can plug the microphone in. Okay, so now we can go ahead and install this new stereo. And before you mount these 4 screws, you want to get the Metra trim piece and put that on first. Now this trim piece can only be oriented in one direction, so take note, the thicker side is on the bottom. And you kind of have a little bit of a juggling act because you have to hold this up while inserting the screws. And there you go. So let's turn the truck on. So as you can see, the steering wheel controls, I'm not touching the unit. They control the volume. Can change the inputs. Now unfortunately, we do have limited steering wheel controls available to us, and I'll show you a little quirk about these steering wheel controls, but the volume up, this is volume down, this is forward track, and this is back track. You can also configure these 2 top buttons as well. But as I hit these up, down, and left and right buttons, watch what happens on the driver information center, the DIC, as I push these buttons. So not only is this down and up button controlling the volume of the head unit, but it controls the driver information center, which can be kind of annoying. I'm not crazy about it, but if you go to the speedometer setting, the up and down arrows don't change anything on this view, and you can control the radio how you like. Now the main reason people are probably going to buy this head unit are probably for the Apple CarPlay and Android Auto functionality that's built into it. So let's test that out. When you plug the phone in, does it automatically switch? Yes, it does. So as you can see, the head unit now is working perfectly fine with Apple CarPlay. You can get to your Google Maps, phone calls, music, and see all of your other Apple CarPlay compatible applications.
And just mention this also.
This also works with Android Auto. We tested it with Cliff's phone, so have no fear about that. It worked perfectly fine. So there you go, that's the radio installed. Now we still have a lot to learn about it, so what we're gonna do is learn about it for a little bit, test it, get to use it, and then we're gonna make a very in-depth video and a walkthrough showing every single setting that you can change and what this device is capable of. Also, we're gonna try and fix the little quirks that we couldn't in this video. Okay, so we had an idea in the middle of this installation, but we didn't have the part that we needed, so we ordered this USB mini to USB type A adapter. And the reason we did that is because if you come in here, the center, there is a USB port right there. But when you install an aftermarket radio, you lose the functionality in here. As you can see, the USB cable is coming down the middle of the dashboard. But behind this radio, there is a USB mini port or plug, and this is what we're hoping will allow us to regain usability of the center USB. All right, so this is the male. So this is the male USB port. It's a mini. We're going to plug that into the back of the head unit using this. So there's only one USB cable for this head unit, and I already ran it down to the bottom of the dash. So I was able to make it barely reach by pulling it all the way up. And if you look here, this should be able to plug in, and then we'll test it. Turn the truck on. Head unit's turning on, so we'll give that a second. All right, let's plug this in. Boom, look at that, charging. And it looks like unlock iPhone to use accessories. Okay, so I unlock the phone. Let's see if the radio allows me, this is really hard to do with one hand. Go to home, Apple CarPlay, no? All right, so the phone is charging. That's a fact. Okay, so the phone is definitely charging. It's 95 and charging. How do I get Apple CarPlay to work? You're going to lose Apple CarPlay, but you will keep charging capabilities. So if you run a splitter or like a USB hub to this USB that goes to the head unit, and you plug in the factory Dodge mini USB port, as well as a normal USB port, like an iPhone cable, then you should be able to run that iPhone cable wherever you want, or an USB extension. So now you'll have two cables. You'll have the one that I'm gonna keep running under the dash, and you'll have this here for charging capabilities, but you won't be able to use Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. So that's a bummer. But if you're wondering whether or not you could use this factory mini USB port for Apple CarPlay, you cannot. As always, all of the products and items that we use will be linked in the description below. And if you found this video to be helpful, please give us a big like and subscribe. And thanks for watching.